All right, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon and thank you everyone for staying. So my name is Sophie Otsuru Schieber. I'm currently working at Iwate University and also at Chuo University. And today I'll be talking about using pictures as prompts for speaking tests. So first, let me start with my outline. So I'll list the different options for speaking tests. And if you can think of anything else, please type them on the chat. Then I would like to explain why I think picture description is a great support for speaking assessments. Then I will provide you with a framework that you can share with your students and that you can use yourself, because right after I give you the framework, I will ask you to practice, take a speaking test yourself. And I will finish with some descriptors. First, for lower level students, so kind of pre-intermediate students, CEFR A2, B1, and for more fluent learners, so maybe equivalent to a CEFR B2 level, threshold level. Okay, so what are the options when we want to assess the speaking skills of our students? Well, working at university level, presentations are a very common way to assess speaking skills. So they might be individual presentations or group presentations. They are great, first of all, because it's full of transferable skills. Presentations are something that students have to do for other courses and might have to do in their job later on. The issue with presentations is that most of the time, presentation can and should be rehearsed ahead of time. So it's really difficult to know what students, learners are able to produce spontaneously. So most of us ask questions at the end of a presentation. So if it's individual presentation, then we might have a good chance to hear what a learner can do. But if it's a group presentation, it's much harder. You might not have enough time to ask enough questions to all the members in the group. And sometimes finding a question that's giving enough space for learners to reply long sentences rather than just yes or no or I don't know is also difficult to find. Another option to assess speaking skills that is used, I think, more often with young learners, it's memorized role plays. What I mean is you have a dialogue with 2 or 3 characters, and each student has to memorize their part, the lines at home, and play it in front of the classroom. I personally remember doing that in German when I was in middle school. So I don't know how much it is used in Japan, but that's something that is quite used in Europe with younger learners, primary school and maybe secondary schools. But again, here we are measuring, we're not measuring spontaneous production, we're measuring what students have memorized. So we're not really assessing their speaking skills. We might be able to assess their pronunciation, but we're not able to assess their vocab or their grammar. To address the issue of spontaneous production with adult learners in business English, notably, you also have the option of spontaneous role plays. So in this case, you will give 2 or 3 learners a flashcard with a role. So for example, you are a buyer, you're a client, you need to buy raw material for the lowest price possible. And then the other student, the other learner is given another flashcard. You are the supplier. You want to sell as much as possible for the highest price possible. And then both learners are asked to just perform based on the roles they've been given. I've seen that done a few times in business English with adults. It's really difficult, especially with Japanese learners, because they don't know what to say. It works quite well with outgoing people, people who like acting and who are very creative. But if you're a little bit reserved, that is really difficult, I think. So to address all of these issues like prepared speech and spontaneous speech, but without having any ideas what to say about the content, I think picture description are a good options to address the issues I've just mentioned. So let me tell you why I think these are good options. Well, picture descriptions are used in some standardized tests. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Pearson Progress Test, but it's there. That's one of the things that you have to do. It's not part of the IELTS or the TOEFL, but this test, this standardized test offers it. Again, memory from high school. It's a fairly common practice in secondary school for modern foreign languages. So partly because of all the language you can produce thanks to the picture, but also it helps raise awareness on visual literacy. What's in the foreground, what's in the background, what angle has been chosen, etc., etc. So again, that's something I remember having done quite a few times in German and in Spanish. But the main two reasons why I think picture description is a great prompt for speaking test is, first of all, when you give students a picture, you're not giving them words. And if you give them words, you might prompt them, you might prime them with some grammatical structure or lexical items. So what I mean by that, I think we've all, I've definitely had students who were given like a chart with words so that they could discuss an idea and different aspects of this idea. But then the students would only use the word that's written on the prompt, and that's it. So it kind of narrows down the range of vocabulary they can use. Same with grammatical structure. Studies have shown that when you use a particular grammatical structure and somebody listens to you, that person who's listening is likely to use the same structure. So again, you don't want priming too much. It's not because you don't want to help them, but you don't want to narrow down the range of vocabulary and grammar they could be using, which will be assessed for the speaking exam. And the final point I'd like to make is that a picture provides a great framework. It provides contents to the students. So they can tell a story based on a picture. So they can tell who, what, where, when, and if they're higher level students, why or how. So this will enable them to speak for quite a long time, depending on their level. You can easily ask them to speak for 1 minute, or if they're very proficient, maybe up to 5 minutes. Because if the picture is well chosen, then there's plenty to say about it. Now, talking about the who, what, where, when, why, how, in what order, because it's all very nice and lovely, but usually students, especially when they've never done it, they don't know what to say. They see this picture, they can see there's something going on in the picture, but they don't know where to start and they don't know what to say. So I have come up with a framework so that students can have a structure and complete the structure with content that they can see on the picture. So what I tell my students is usually to start with the where, the big where. And I also tell them to start with the sentence. The scene takes place in a park, on a train, at a hospital. The reason why I really want them to use that phrase is because the scene takes place, as you can see, there's a third person singular present simple, and there's an S. So in spontaneous speech, especially with lower level students, and especially Japanese lower level students, they tend to forget the S at the third person singular, so it's there. So it's something that the assessor can check at least once. So moving on from the very general background, the very general where, to a more detailed where, and explaining a little bit what's in the background. So maybe 2 to 4 sentences just to use there is, there are, and to show that students are aware of the difference between the background and the foreground. It can also include when. So for example, I can see the sun is shining, it's daylight, it might be summer. Okay, so a couple of sentences about the background, and then student can move on to what really matters, what's happening in the foreground. So again, I tell my students, please just always start with, in the foreground, there is, or they are, characters, whatever, and then a relative pronoun, who or which, plus a present continuous. So they can say who is performing an action, and then they can describe the action a little bit more. So who and what, and then this should be the main focus of the students, and they can give 3, 4, 5 sentences about it. So typically in the foreground, there are 4 people who are eating dinner. There is a cake on the table, etc., etc. And once they have described what's going on, then they can speculate on who those people are, why they are there, and how they came there, for example. So if there are 4 people eating at a table, then student might be able to say, oh, they must be a family. If there are 2 adults and 2 children, they must be a family. So they can conclude with this kind of inferences and speculation using modal verbs. And this is especially for higher level students, for those who want to reach a B2 level, this is absolutely crucial. So yes, so this is the background, a very general where, more detailed where and when. Then most importantly, the foreground, who and what's going on, and then some inferences, some speculation about what's going on using modal verbs. Does it make sense? I'm not going to open the chat because then after that I can't go back to my slides. Okay, so if it makes sense, it's going to be your turn to practice this. Okay, so I'm going to flash picture. You're going to have 90 seconds to think about what you're going to say. Don't take notes, don't start talking, just 90 seconds to prepare. And then 90 seconds to describe the picture. This is, by the way, the format of the Pearson Progress Test. And what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, is to prepare your mobile phones to record yourselves, or your laptops, so that you will know how well you perform. Knowing that it's an English exam and that you should focus on how much vocabulary, like the range of vocabulary and grammar you're going to be using. And hopefully the framework I've just given you might help you use that great vocab that you have. So, do we have everybody ready? Okay. I will assume it's a yes. Okay, so 90 seconds to have a look at the picture and prepare in your head what you'll be saying. Ready? Go. 30 seconds. Okay, right. So now you will have 90 seconds to explain what you saw on the picture. I'm going to flash it again, don't worry. Maybe get your smartphone ready to record yourselves. Okay, you have 90 seconds to describe the picture using the best vocab, the best grammar you can, starting now. Okay, time is up. So, because I'm slightly running out of time, I just would like to give you the rubrics for markings that I used. They're based on the IELTS test. And then I will show you the descriptors for pre-intermediate level and then intermediate level. And after that, I'll take questions if that's okay. And I would like also would like you to share your experience. So what I would measure with this task is task response. How well did you describe the picture and interpret it? Lexical range and accuracy, grammatical range and accuracy as well, and obviously pronunciation and fluency. So these are the main rubrics I would use to mark students for their speaking assessments during the speaking exam. For lower level students, so obviously the same categories, what we want to see in the task response is at least the who, what, where, like the basic things. In terms of vocabulary and accuracy, showing that I need learners to show that they have enough vocabulary to describe the scene with reasonable detail. They can locate objects in relation to each other. There is the mom is between the two daughters or something like that. And that students can use articles and pronounce flexibly. In terms of grammar, we're looking for morphemes, grammatical morphemes like third person S's, ed at the end of past tenses, some past tenses. We're also looking at the difference between present continuous and present simple. And finally, pronunciation and accuracy, and pronunciation accuracy, sorry, and fluency. At pre-intermediate level, I just need students to be understandable. So that's what I mean by pronunciation does not usually impede communication. I also need them to speak at a normal speed. So 50 words, it's really a minimum to make sure that fluency is all right. So these are for pre-intermediate students. For B2 level students, like I said, of course, what, where, and when have to be, and who have to be mentioned, but not most importantly, but to reach that threshold level of B2 level, they need to infer information from the picture. It cannot be just descriptive. Obviously, a higher level and a wider range of vocabulary, something that's a little bit more idiomatic. And in terms of grammar, you would expect complex sentences, maybe palette structures, maybe conditionals. And especially when students are trying to infer information from the picture, then ideally they should use a modal plus a past tense. They might have been here because blah, blah, blah. And pronunciation should not impede communication, and fluency should be 70 words is really, again, a minimum. Good. I've reached the end of my talk. I will take some questions if you have any, or otherwise I would like to have your feedback on the task in itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Either in the chat or you can turn your mic on. I have a question. What kind of feedback do you get from your students on these? Do they find them engaging or really challenging?
They find it, at first, they find it really challenging because, again, they see the picture and they don't know what to say. But after I've honestly drilled them a few times, they like it because they actually don't know where to stop. Like 90 seconds is actually not enough. So I find it really great. So at first they find it difficult, but then they like it.
Do you demonstrate how you would perform a similar task to them, just to give them?
Yeah, I do it myself. Yeah, just like I ask you to do it, I ask them to do it. I do it myself so that they can see. Does it improve their conversation skills? That's a good question. That improves their fluency, at least to a certain extent. So I guess to that, in that aspect, yes. Now, obviously, it's not an interaction. So, well, by the way, the kind of feedback I got from some students who took like role play kind of assessment, speaking assessment before, they were quite happy not to have a partner because they really feel like who their partner is going to impact their grades to a really big extent, usually to a bigger extent. They really dramatize it, but they really think that they are either too bad and they've drawn people down, or that their partner was really, not engaging and then they couldn't speak enough. So in this case, it's just them in the picture. So they quite like that too.
Ismat had a question above that one. What form of feedback do you use? Oral only or another form?
Okay, in that sense, sorry. I have, so let me show you this again. I have descriptors, really. It's usually a form, it's a table. You have task response, 100 to 80 successfully. Lots, it's a gradient, it's usually a table, and they can actually read the descriptors, the rubrics ahead of time, so they know how they're going to be marked. And then orally, we'll give them some feedback, or maybe you should talk a little bit more about this, or did you mention that, or things like that.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I really liked your presentation. Thank you so much for sharing. I thought it was very, very informational, very, very useful. I think also when I was thinking about the applications of this, I was also thinking it would be this is great practice for anybody who is taking like TOEFL or any kind of like official standardized test, because they often have to respond to a question based on a photo that they're given, right? This is with Cambridge or TOEFL or something like that. So I think it's also applicable for the long term if they were to take such tests, right? It makes them think on their feet, makes them focus and analyze a photo, not just what's going on, but what's going on in the background, what's going on in the foreground, so they can talk as much as they possibly can about it, right? I feel like, you know, if you don't practice that, students don't really know what to say when they first see a photo. They only describe what's happening, but they don't really pay attention to the details. So I think this activity is really, really good for that purpose as well.
Yeah, very good. I agree.
Thank you, Rachel. Jacob, to answer your question, it helps A1, A2 level much more, I think, than B2 students, because they have something that they can cling on to. It's like, okay, I'm going to describe the picture like this, like that. So I think it helps them more. But I can look into that, actually. That's a good point.
Okay, we have time for one more question. If anyone
Johan?
wants to say anything before we, oh, Johan, go ahead. I have you muted. Please unmute your mic. Thanks.
I used to teach at a big primary school, and we had about, I would say, 720 students. And I was in charge of 480 of them. And then, yeah, so for one of the, I was the kind of like the curriculum developer. And I tried to do what you're doing, which is kind of like speaking one-to-one, providing pictures. I'm just wondering how you manage your time with the students. Do you try, I mean, for example, I was a primary school teacher, so when I had time, sorry, excuse my son. When I had time to have the speaking test with one student, the rest of the class was just, you know, doing activities that I assigned. So how do you kind of, I don't know, create time to make sure you balance everything at university level? I'm quite interested because I used to teach at university for a semester.
Okay, so technology. So if I had to do it like one-to-one with every student, face-to-face, that would take forever.
Right.
And that would completely do my hair. So what I've been doing so far, I've been asked, well, we had labs that students could go to, and then they would have everything like the headset and everything, and they would record themselves talking to the computer.
Right.
It would be saved, and then I can actually listen to this anytime I want.
Right, so it's recorded.
So, yeah. We would all be in class, like in big labs.
Right.
And they would all take it at the same time. So that would save us time. And then I could assess it later on.
Do they have, sorry, just one question. Do they have chance to listen to themselves first before they submit it?
No.
It's a one-time thing. Right. I guess, yeah, I guess that works too for accuracy.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think you can also, with the wonder of technology for university level students, you can safely assume everyone has a smartphone.
Yeah.
And just have them record their audio on the smartphone and send it to you. Either if you're using a learning management system, submit it that way. For me, I use what's called send to Dropbox. They just email me their audio file, and I have an address created at send to Dropbox, and it just dumps it into my Dropbox folder, and then I go in and listen to it. The biggest problem I have is students not saying their name, so I get like a dozen different files that have the file name as 1, and then I got to listen to it and try to guess who the hell it was, and sometimes I can't. So usually in those situations, I will play them out loud in front of everybody in the classroom and have them raise their hand if it's theirs. And normally once I do that, I never have that problem again. Nobody wants their audio played in front of the class.
Strangely enough.
Okay, and I saw a lot of people were saying Flipgrid is really good for having them record. Yeah, if you can use Flipgrid, that's awesome too.
Good.
Okay, I see that we have gone a little bit past the time, and that's okay. I want to say thank you very much to Sophie for sharing your presentation today. Yay! Oh, Sophie, you're muted for some reason.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for the comments.